Good morning, my name is Alex White. This is my wife, Dani.
Hi.
We're with Yukon Pizza, and today we're gonna make you a hot wood-fired sourdough pizza. We're gonna start off with making a margherita pizza, which is the classic Neapolitan style pie. The one thing that makes our pizzas a little bit different is that we use this family sourdough that's been in our family since 1897. So it's about 125 years old now. This sourdough has been passed down from generation to generation in my father's side of the family, and we use it for our pizzas every day. First off, we're gonna start with getting a dough ball out. So what makes sourdough special as an ingredient for making pizzas and making bread is that it is a naturally leavened yeast product. That means it doesn't need an active dry yeast to ferment the dough. What it does use instead is a sourdough starter, or you might know it as a poulish or a biga. What these are living yeast cultures that have active bacteria and yeast that ferment and proof the dough as you work with it. Ours has been growing and working and being fed for over 100 years, which means that the sourdough culture that we keep alive every day gains unique characteristics and properties for flavor and style of dough. Because it's traveled from the Yukon territories to Alaska to California, it's had access to a lot of different kinds of yeasts and bacteria out in the air there. So that makes it a very unique, active, and different kind of sourdough. So we're gonna open up this dough ball, which means we're gonna start with the skin side on the bottom. We're gonna work by pushing the air out of the dough. The biggest thing when you're working with opening a pizza dough is being gentle with it. A lot of people are sometimes too hard on the dough. We're trying to keep all the air inside there that you've worked to build up with fermentation. We wanna keep that inside the edge of the dough so that it puffs up in a nice crust. So we're gonna use our fingertips just to gently work that air to the edge. Turn it over. We're gonna keep working just to the edge. You wanna make sure we don't ever activate, like actually work with that portion right there. Turn it over, work with it again, more flour here. A lot of my questions that I get about our sourdough is, what's the recipe? How do you make your dough? There are a lot of recipes out there for pizza dough, but they're all relatively straightforward. Pizza dough is water, flour, salt, and yeast. At the end of the day, that's really the four things you really need to make a pizza dough. But the biggest ingredient that you're gonna need is time. Time and patience will always lead you to a better pizza dough and yield you a more consistent crust. All right, so we're opening this up here. This is called the Neapolitan slap. Dani, how many pizzas do you think you've opened up by now?
Several thousand, I would think by now, but you lose count after a few of them. But the more you do it, the better you get. So
the more you do it, the better you get.
I'll keep doing it.
I'm getting there myself. All right, so now we've opened up our pizza dough about 80% of the way. The final opening will actually happen on the peel before we put it inside the oven. So our next step is going to be building the pie. And this is another important part of things is quality of your ingredients. As always, the better stuff you can find, the better your pizza is going to taste. So we use a couple of different things. We use tomatoes called Dynamo tomatoes. It's a family farm out of Southern California. They are just a wonderful, delicious San Marzano style tomato. We use mozzarella cheese that's from a company called Grande Cheese. They're out of Wisconsin and just make the best cheese stuff that we love to use. The flavor is amazing. So we'll start with our San Marzano tomatoes. These just come straight from the can, pureed with a stick blender. We don't add salt, we don't add any basil. It's just the tomato in the can. After a lot of different testing and trying things out, we found that the tomato is really good by itself. You don't have to really add much to it.
And we do make some pizzas that have a cooked sauce that has, tomatoes and oregano, basil, other seasonings like that. But we find on the margherita, you really want to let the tomatoes be the star on their own.
Exactly. And that's kind of the whole point of what Yukon Pizza is about is less is more. We love simplicity in all our pizzas and really focusing on the sourdough and how that characterizes and balances with the ingredients that we're working with. So we have a nice sprinkling of Parmesan. We'll do oregano as well. Give us a nice covering right there. And then we have, this is called Corto. This is a brand of olive oil out of California as well. Now we got some mozzarella.
And on a margherita, you're going to see more sliced mozzarella than on, let's say, a New York style or another kind that's going to have shredded cheese all over it. So it doesn't cover it completely in cheese like you see in other kinds of pizza.
Well, especially once it goes into the high temperature oven using the wood fire, the cheese will melt down nicely. It also gives it a good balance of color and sauce and basil. So we throw this on now. I like a nice amount of basil. We put the basil on before it goes in the oven. This is because we use a pretty high temperature oven. It cooks relatively fast, so it doesn't burn the basil. Rather, it cooks it and gives it a nice char, which is a really great effect. So this is our final completed margherita pizza ready to go in the oven. The next step is to put it on the peel and slide it inside. Working with a pizza oven that's wood-fired and your pizza that you made at home is a delicate balancing act of knowing your oven's deck temperature and how your pizza is going to cook. So always the first one is kind of a bit of like, oh, we'll see how it goes. But we always know that our wood-fire oven is consistent. The deck is always at the same temperature. And you try to have a nice coving of the fire that helps kind of cook on the top as well on the bottom. So using a pizza peel, getting it on, everyone has a hard time putting pizza on the peel and getting it off. Some would say it's the hardest part of the job. I agree. So what an easy tip is to do is to lift the little edge here. You're just gonna slide that right underneath. So that is our margherita on the peel. I like to make sure it's nice and round. And what I'm doing here is I'm going around and giving the edges just a little pinch. So all these little pinch points will create nice little char blisters as it cooks in the oven. Okay, so we have our margherita pizza on the peel. We're gonna put it in the oven. It should be about a 90-second to 2-minute bake. These are pretty fast. We try to keep our deck temperature in the zone of 750 degrees to 800 degrees. This isn't typical for all pizzas, of course. This is what we use for our style of dough. You can handle a high temperature. But if you're doing a New York style pizza at home, aim for like 550 on your deck. Put this guy in here. We're gonna aim for the back edge there. That's where the hottest bricks are. Make for the most consistent bake. With cooking a pizza like this, we are waiting for about 30 seconds for the first initial bake on the bottom to set so that there's no raw dough on the bottom of the pizza as we slide our peel in. We're watching for the nice characteristics of the brown dots showing up on the edge of the crust there as it puffs up, looking really nice. So we give it a nice little turn. We can see that our crust is rising. We're getting a nice leopard spotting. It's a nice patience game of just making sure we turn the pizza consistently. Make sure it cooks all the way around. You can smell it cooking right now and it's absolutely delicious. And that'll probably be our last turn as it cooks. We can see it's browning up nicely, getting its final bake. The cheese is melting. The sauce is bubbling. It's great. It's the best sounds in the world. And then our final move will be to put it up in the dome for just 1 second. Give it a final cook. Bring it out. That is our fresh margherita pizza with our wood-fired sourdough. Steaming from the oven. Wood fire is great to cook with. We love it. Using a good hardwood is important. Hardwood burns hot and burns long. To attain those temperatures in the wood-fired oven especially, you're really gonna need that type of wood. We're gonna do a special pizza shears to cut it open. You can kind of see how the fermentation causes the cornichone and the crust to rise.
What's the point of doing that small cut?
That way you can get straight in and get a clean cut so when you slice the pizza, it doesn't crush the edge of the crust there.
This is versus using a traditional pizza cutter.
We'll show that here in a second and see kind of how it squishes it. But this is more for show and fun. This is old school Italian stuff right here. So we got our slice right here. You can see the extremely beautiful amount of fermentation and bubbling as it opens up in the heat. This is what we're after when we're making these pizzas, is this nice open airy crust. It's very soft, still has a little bit of crunch on the outside, delicious cheese dripping off. I mean, this is the way to go. Dani, you get the first bite.
All right.
You get the first bite.
I think it tastes even better than it looks.
That is the best part about the job. So there's that, and then when we cut it with the peel or the reel, you can see kind of squishes it, but we love seeing this beautiful fermentation, our sourdough growing. I mean, it's just the best thing.
No, we don't leave our crust behind with our pizza.
No, nope. Bon appetit.